The boardroom was meant to be sacred. Dark wood table, crystal glasses, contracts worth 10 billion stacked between handshakes and signatures. But the silence broke not with respect, it broke with a laugh. Who invited her? The voice came sharp, dripping with condescension. Laughter followed, bouncing against the mahogany walls like cheap echoes in a hollow cathedral. She sat at the center, a black woman in a spotless white suit. Still, anchored, her phone in her hand, pressed lightly against her ear. No flinch, no smile, just silence. The man in blue rose. His grin was wide, his hand theatrical. A glass of red wine tilted. The liquid poured out not onto the table, not onto the floor. Onto her. The wine cascaded down her hair, her face, her blazer, staining fabric like blood on snow. The men roared louder, slapping the table, pointing, mocking. "Cancel the deal," one shouted. "She doesn't belong here," another smirked. A third leaned back, whispering. $10 be mistake letting her through the door. And through it all, she didn't move. Her breath was steady, her eyes forward. She held her phone as if she were listening to a voice only she could hear. A voice that mattered more than their laughter, more than their insults, more than their staged humiliation. The red dripped from her chin to the contract papers. Ink bled, numbers blurred. Still, she said nothing. Because this wasn't the first time. Years ago, another boardroom, another laugh. A clerk who said, "Sweetheart, the investor entrance is downstairs." Another man who sneered, "You're in the wrong room." That memory pressed against her now like a scar reopening. But scars don't weaken, they sharpen. The room thought her silence was surrender. They didn't see it was strategy. One man leaned across the table, finger stabbing the air. "You hear me? You're not one of us. This deal dies tonight." And another lifted his glass in a mock toast. To removing distractions. The laughter swelled, but underneath it, something else was rising, the tension of witnesses. A secretary at the corner, phone half hidden in her lap, camera already recording. A junior advisor biting his lip, eyes darting, unsure whether to intervene. The wine kept dripping, the red kept spreading. But her stillness only grew heavier, thicker, unshakable. And then she finally spoke. Not loud, not frantic. Just a whisper sharp enough to cut the room. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her." The phone in her hand lit up. A single vibration. A voice on the other end waiting for her command. The men still laughed. But the storm had already begun. The stain spread, red lines across white fabric. And yet she did not move. Her name was Vanessa Cole, 40 years old. Built her empire from courtrooms and contracts. Former state attorney general turned corporate architect. She had walked into this boardroom with $10 billion on the line, a merger that could shift entire markets. But to them, she was just an intruder. Security should have stopped her at the door, one man scoffed. He didn't lower his voice. He wanted her to hear it. Another leaned back in his chair, lips curling. "She thinks she's one of us. Look at her." A ripple of chuckles traveled down the table. Vanessa adjusted nothing. Not her hair, not her suit, not even the wine dripping onto her lap. Instead, she lifted her eyes, met theirs, steady, controlled, and that silence heavier than every insult they threw. Years ago, she had entered a similar room. Same wood, same glass, same faces arranged like a jury already convinced of her guilt. Back then, she was younger, softer. They told her, "Wait outside. The real negotiators are coming." She had waited, not outside, but in the system, building, rising, collecting every slight like evidence. Now, she was back in a boardroom that looked different but felt the same. And this time, she wasn't the guest. The man with silver hair jabbed a finger in her direction. His cufflink glinted under the chandelier. "This is business," he barked. "Not charity. You don't belong at this table." And she let the words land, let them echo. Then, she finally set her phone on the table, face down, calm. "I booked this room," she said evenly. Laughter erupted. "You booked the wrong one," someone sneered. A younger advisor scribbled in his notes, not daring to look up. The secretary in the corner shifted in her seat, phone tilted, lens catching the scene. Somewhere, Digital witnesses were already multiplying. Vanessa didn't need them. She didn't need allies. But she wanted the room to keep digging, to keep exposing themselves. Because silence was not surrender. It was a trap. Another director leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice dripping venom. You're not serious enough for 10 billion. You're just ornamental. The laughter grew again. Glasses clinked. Chairs scraped. The noise of arrogance filled the room. And still she, Saturday, still as a verdict waiting to be read. The air thickened, not with smoke, but with arrogance. A tall director in a navy suit slammed his palm flat against the table. The crystal glasses rattled. Enough of this circus, he declared. We vote. Right here. Right now. Remove her from the deal. Hands rose around the table. Quick, casual, as if stripping 10 billion from her was no heavier than ordering another bottle of wine. Vanessa's chair didn't move. Her breathing didn't change. She simply watched. Unanimous? The silver-haired man smirked. He didn't even count the hands. He didn't need to. This wasn't democracy. It was theater. Security! He barked. His voice cracked through the boardroom doors. 2 guards appeared within seconds. Black uniforms sharp, expressions blank. Their boots echoed against marble as they approached. One director leaned back, whispering just loud enough, "Finally, put her where she belongs outside." The wine stain had spread across Vanessa's lap, dark and heavy, but her eyes clear, unwavering, cut through the room. She remembered another night, 26 years old, invited to present her first acquisition plan. They told her she could sit, but not speak. She had watched her ideas stolen, word for word, from her own slides. That night she swore, never again, and yet here it was again. Different faces, same theft, same arrogance. One guard moved closer, hand hovering near her chair. "Ma'am, you'll need to step out." The silver-haired man grinned wider. "You heard him. This table isn't for you." But Vanessa didn't rise, didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, voice low but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You mistake stillness for weakness. That's your last mistake." The guards hesitated. Just a fraction. Enough to make the room restless. A junior analyst shifted in his seat, pen tapping nervously against his notebook. The secretary in the corner pressed her phone tighter, the recording light a tiny red flame against the growing storm. The directors didn't notice. They were too busy laughing, too eager to watch her dragged out like a trespasser. They didn't realize. The room was already turning against them. The guards hovered, one on each side. Their hands lingered near her chair, waiting for the nod to pull her out. The boardroom pulsed with anticipation, smiles, smirks, a few raised glasses. Vanessa didn't budge. She placed her palms flat on the table, not clenched, not trembling, perfectly still. "Do you not hear me?" the silver-haired man snapped. "You're done here. Get her out." One guard shifted closer, his hand brushing the back of her chair, but she lifted her eyes slowly and locked on him. It was not a plea. It was not defiance. It was something heavier, a warning. The guard froze. His partner hesitated. The silence stretched, longer than it should have. The directors grew restless. "Move her," one barked. "She has no vote, no voice. She's wasting our time." Still, Vanessa said nothing. The silence was louder than their shouting, because silence in a room like this isn't absence. It's pressure. It forces every word they've spoken to echo back at them, uglier each time. In the corner, the secretary's phone tilted higher. The red light glowed, recording. Her whisper was barely audible, but it cut. "Is this really happening?" The junior analyst looked up from his notes. His pen stilled. "She hasn't even spoken," he muttered. "And they're calling security." The secretary pressed her lips tight. Her finger hovered above the screen, ready to stream instead of record. She glanced at Vanessa, waiting for a cue, but Vanessa didn't give one. She didn't need to. Another director slammed his chair back. "She's mocking us," sitting there like she's untouchable. No one laughed this time. The laughter had started to sound hollow. Because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it lets the room collapse under its own weight. The silver-haired man leaned forward, sneer curling into anger. "Do you think your silence protects you? This deal is ours, not yours. You're nothing here." Vanessa blinked once. Slow, calm. Her voice, when it came, was low enough that only those nearest could hear. "Nothing?" The word wasn't a question. It was a mirror. The secretary's breath caught. The analyst dropped his pen. Even the guards seemed unsettled, caught between orders and instinct. The silence deepened, heavy, charged. Vanessa hadn't lifted her voice. She hadn't moved an inch. But the boardroom, so certain, so smug minutes ago, was no longer laughing. The storm was gathering, and it was moving their way. The secretary's hand shook, not from fear, from fury. Her phone was already recording, the red light steady, catching every insult, every order. She glanced at Vanessa again. The woman hadn't moved, hadn't begged, hadn't defended herself. Just silence, white suit drenched in red, hands still on the table. The secretary's voice broke through, timid but audible. "Why are you calling security? She hasn't even spoken." The room snapped toward her. Eyes narrowed. The silver-haired man scoffed. "Put your phone away before you lose your job." She didn't. Her hand steadied. "I'm not stopping," she said, louder now. The junior analyst beside her swallowed hard. His notes were a mess of half-formed sentences. He finally pushed the pen aside. "She hasn't broken any rule," he said, voice tight but clear. All she did was sit down. Laughter tried to rise again. Forced, shallow, but it didn't land the same. Because now the room wasn't unanimous anymore. The guard nearest to Vanessa shifted back a step. His eyes flicked toward the secretary's phone, then to Vanessa, then to the directors. Orders weighed heavy on him, but so did doubt. "You two are out of line," barked another director, his face red with anger. "This is corporate governance, not a street protest." But the damage was done. The illusion of control had cracked. One by one, eyes moved back to Vanessa. Her silence was no longer absence, it was gravity, pulling every doubt, every unspoken thought into orbit around her. The junior analyst straightened in his chair, emboldened. "You can't just erase someone because you don't like what she looks like." The words landed like glass breaking. The secretary's recording light glowed brighter in the tension. Her lips curled into something between fear and defiance. "The world deserves to see this," she whispered. Vanessa finally lifted her gaze. Not at the board, not at the guards. At them, her unexpected witnesses. Her eyes said everything her lips hadn't. "Hold the line. Not for me, for truth." The silver-haired man slammed the table again. "Enough. You two will be escorted out as well, guards." But the guards hesitated. They weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at her. The stain on her suit was ugly. The silence was heavy, and the room was shifting. The first witness had spoken. The second had followed. And once a crack starts, walls fall. The boardroom no longer hummed with easy laughter. The cracks had begun to show. A secretary recording. A junior analyst speaking. Guards hesitating. And that made the directors furious. One of them, a senior vice president with a jaw clenched tight and a watch that flashed under the chandelier, leaned forward until his shadow fell across Vanessa. His voice wasn't mocking anymore. It was sharp, cutting. "You're a fraud," he spat. "A thief dressed in white. Sitting here like you earned this seat. You don't belong at this table, and you never will." His words ricocheted off the walls. The others nodded, eager to reclaim control. "Remove her vote from the record. Strike her name from the deal. This contract will move forward without her." The secretary gasped softly, phone trembling in her hands. The analyst whispered, almost to himself, "You can't just erase her." But the senior VP pressed harder. He slammed the stack of contracts in front of him, wine splashing from his glass onto the papers. "Erase her? Watch me. She doesn't get a say in $10 billion. Not now, not ever." Silence followed, not Vanessa's silence, but the room's. Heavy, uneasy. Vanessa's eyes lifted. Calm, cold. Her voice, when it came, was deliberate, measured. "You confuse your comfort for authority," she said, "and your prejudice for truth." The VP sneered, leaning even closer. "Call it whatever you like. When the record is written, you won't exist in it." The words hung, cruel and final, but the secretary's recording didn't stop. The analyst's pen moved again this time, not taking orders, but documenting every insult. And Vanessa? She sat unmoved, her stillness sharper than any outburst, her silence now a mirror, reflecting their arrogance back at them. The storm was building, and they were too blind to see it forming over their own heads. The senior VP's words still hung in the air when another director, a man younger, sharper suit, arrogance radiating, snatched the contract packet from the table. "You want to sit here?" he hissed. Then watch this deal vanish. He tore the front page clean down the middle. The rip echoed, raw and jagged, across the boardroom. Ink and paper scattered like snow across polished wood. Gasps broke the silence, not from Vanessa, from the witnesses. The secretary's phone shook, recording every shred that fluttered to the floor. The analyst froze, pen suspended midair. The younger director wasn't done. He reached for Vanessa's tablet, the slim black device she had set down minutes earlier. His fingers closed around it, knuckles white. "Property of the company now," he sneered. With one motion, he flung it across the room. It skidded against the marble, slamming into the leg of a leather chair before clattering to the floor. The board erupted in noise, mocking laughs, sharp orders, shouts for security to act. "Get her out. She's wasting our time. She's nothing but a distraction." The guards stepped forward again, this time more forceful. One reached for her arm, the other angled behind her chair, ready to pull her up. The secretary's voice cracked through the chaos. "This isn't right. You saw what he did. He destroyed her property." No one answered her. The junior analyst's voice followed, louder than before. "She hasn't raised her voice once, and you're treating her like a criminal." Still, Vanessa didn't move. Wine-stained suit, empty hands, tablet broken across the floor, contracts ripped and scattered. And yet, she sat straight, chin lifted, eyes steady. The silver-haired man smirked, certain of victory. "Drag her out, now." The guards leaned in closer. Fingers brushed her sleeve. And in that suspended moment, with arrogance roaring and witnesses trembling, Vanessa finally inhaled. Slow, deep, deliberate. Not resistance, not surrender, something else entirely. The kind of breath taken before a verdict. The kind that means the storm is seconds away. The guard's grip tightened on her sleeve. The sound of paper ripping still lingered in the air, mingling with laughter and jeers. But Vanessa didn't rise. She didn't fight. She let the moment breathe long enough for memory to surface. It wasn't this boardroom she saw. It was another, 25 years old. Her first major pitch. She had walked in clutching a folder of projections she had stayed awake 3 nights to build. A room of men twice her age stared her down. One smirked. One whispered. Another leaned back and said, "Sweetheart, you can leave the charts. We'll let the real consultants handle it." She had swallowed her words that day, walked out of the room with her folder half open, her pride bleeding. The deal went forward without her. They stole her ideas, her strategy, her vision, and never even said her name. She carried that silence like a scar. Not the kind that fades, but the kind that calcifies into armor. Years later, a hotel lobby. She was a rising attorney, briefcase in hand. Reservation confirmed. The manager looked her up and down and said, "You don't look like someone staying here." She slept in her rental car that night, and in the morning she began drafting the framework for her own firm. Every insult, every dismissal, every locked door she didn't forget, she didn't forgive. She built on it. Now, in this boardroom, with wine staining her suit and her tablet cracked across the floor, she wasn't silent because she was weak. She was silent because she had learned. Silence unnerves. Silence magnifies. Silence makes their own words, their slurs, their arrogance echo louder than any protest. The guard tugged again. The silver-haired man smirked wider. The younger director crossed his arms, satisfied. And Vanessa let them believe they were winning. Because storms don't announce themselves with thunder first. They gather, quiet, heavy, until the sky can't hold it anymore. Her silence was that sky. And the break was coming. The guard's hand was firm now, tugging harder. Chairs scraped as directors leaned back, eager to watch her dragged out. The silver-haired man lifted his glass, smug, but Vanessa's eyes stayed steady. She lowered her hand from the table, slowly, deliberately, reached into the inside pocket of her jacket. The room stiffened. For the first time all night they waited. Her fingers emerged not with anger, not with resistance. With a phone, black, sleek, the screen already awake. She tapped once. The speaker lit green. "Nia," she said softly, but the microphone carried. "Yes, Vanessa," came the voice crisp, professional, immediate. Every director froze. "Log this moment," Vanessa said. "Timestamp, video, audio, all of it." Nia didn't hesitate. Logged. Live sync engaged. The secretary's phone trembled. She glanced at the analyst, eyes wide. This wasn't a guest calling for help. This was a commander activating protocol. Vanessa continued. her voice level, each word deliberate. Notify the board. This room has violated protocol. Prepare override authorization. The silver-haired man scoffed, but his smirk wavered. Who do you think you're talking to? Some assistant in HR? Vanessa turned her gaze to him at last. Cold, precise. I'm talking to the system that decides whether you have a job tomorrow. The words landed heavy. Not loud, not emotional, just final. Naya's voice returned, sharper now. Confirmation ready. Waiting on your command. The guards hesitated, their grip loosening. The directors shifted in their seats. The secretary pressed her lips tight, still recording. For the first time that night, the room was quiet. Because Vanessa Cole wasn't pleading. She wasn't defending. She was moving pieces on a board they thought was theirs. And with one phone call, she had made it hers again. The silver-haired man laughed, brittle, forcing bravado back into the room. Protocol? Overrides? You don't even have a seat here. You're nothing but a guest in a meeting too big for you. But Vanessa's phone still glowed green. Nia's voice returned, crisp as glass. Vanessa, the executive system is armed. Confirm if you want to proceed with full authority. The room froze. Full authority. 2 words that didn't belong to guests. 2 words that only one position could trigger. Vanessa lifted her chin, eyes sweeping the table. Each director, each smirk, each face that had laughed when wine stained her suit. Her voice dropped into a calm weight. You think I walked into the wrong room? Silence. You think I begged for a seat at your table? A pause. Her hand pressed flat against the soaked fabric of her blazer, steady as stone. This isn't your table. The secretary's phone trembled, capturing every syllable. The analyst's pen rolled off the desk, forgotten. Even the guards, still hovering, stepped back a fraction. The silver-haired man's grin faltered. What are you saying? Vanessa's eyes locked on his, unblinking. I am not your guest. I am not your token. I am the architect of this merger, the largest shareholder in this room, and the only reason any of you are still sitting in those chairs. Gasps cut the air. A glass toppled. Someone muttered, No, that can't be true. But the phone in her hand chimed once. Nia's voice carried through the speaker, sharp and undeniable. Confirmation broadcast to all directors. Vanessa Cole, primary executive authority, founder, majority vote holder, effective immediately. The words slammed into the room harder than any shout. The laughter died, the arrogance drained. And suddenly, every eye that had mocked her now looked at her like a storm they never saw coming. Vanessa leaned back, calm as ever. You mistook silence for submission. That's your last mistake. The words hung heavy, undeniable. Founder, majority vote holder. The room broke. The silver-haired man recoiled as if struck. His glass tipped, red wine spreading across the papers he'd been so eager to claim. His face drained pale, lips fumbling for words that wouldn't come. The younger director who had torn her contract sat frozen, scraps of paper still clinging to his fingers. His arrogance cracked, replaced by a twitch in his jaw. He whispered almost to himself, No, she can't. But she could, and she had. One by one, the directors looked at her not with contempt but with fear. The same mouths that mocked her now closed tight, afraid of what might slip out and seal their fate. The guards released their stance, stepping back fully now. No one needed to tell them. They knew whose authority carried weight. From the corner, the secretary lowered her phone for the first time. A slow smile tugged at her lips. She whispered, It's real. She owns all of this. The junior analyst leaned forward, awe replacing nerves. I knew it. I knew she wasn't just sitting here. His pen scratched furiously across the page, not out of duty but conviction. Record everything. And then applause. It started soft. A single clap from the far end of the table. Then another. The witnesses had found their courage. Phones lifted higher. Voices murmured in agreement. She told them. She's the owner. They tried to erase her. The sound swelled, not a roar but a steady tide rising against the arrogance that had ruled the room minutes before. The silver-haired man slammed a trembling fist on the table, trying to resurrect his authority. This is outrageous. You ambushed us. Vanessa didn't even turn her head. She simply let the weight of truth crush him. Nia's voice crackled through the phone again, final and cold. All system logs updated. Every director on record. Evidence secured. Oh. The silver-haired man's face crumpled. The younger director's hand dropped the shredded papers like they were burning. And Vanessa? She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't needed to. The boardroom that mocked her was now a room trembling before her. The collapse was complete. The applause faded into silence, not the heavy silence of fear, but the charged silence of judgment. Every eye was on her. Vanessa rose, slowly, deliberately. Wine stains marked her suit, but she stood taller than anyone in the room. Her gaze swept the table, pausing on each man who had laughed, each one who had voted to erase her. Then her eyes landed on the silver-haired man, still trembling behind his glass. "You tore my contracts," she said, voice low but sharp enough to pierce. "You mocked my name. You called security to drag me from my own boardroom." Every sentence was a gavel strike. "You don't belong at this table anymore." She tapped her phone. One simple motion. Nia's voice returned, cold as steel. Termination executed. Access revoked. System updated. The silver-haired man's tablet buzzed red. His login failed. The younger director's badge blinked, denied. One after another, credentials collapsed, locks slamming shut on careers that had mocked her minutes before. Gasps rippled across the room. Some directors slumped in their chairs, stunned. Others clutched their phones, refreshing, desperate for a loophole. None came. The secretary's recording caught it all. The analyst's notes chronicled the downfall. And the witnesses, their smiles widened. Vanessa set her phone on the table, screen dark now. Her voice was final, heavy with calm authority. "You mistook cruelty for strength, policy for justice, laughter for power. But you forgot one thing this company answers to me." She leaned forward, eyes unblinking. "I don't need your votes. I am the vote." The words landed like thunder. Not shouted, not rushed, just absolute. She turned, lifting her chair back into place, straightening her suit, though the stains remained. To her, they weren't weakness. They were proof. Proof that she had stood in fire and left standing. Vanessa walked to the doors, the guards parting instantly. The room stayed frozen, broken men in expensive suits staring after her. And as she stepped into the hallway, her final words lingered in the boardroom like a sentence carved into stone. "You tried to erase me in my own house. Instead, I erased you, permanently." The doors closed behind her. Justice delivered. Quiet. Complete.